Hi, I'm Gabriel. Thank you so much for purchasing my tour. I'm going to be your tour guide today. In my spare time, I like to drum, I like to play sports, and I like fashion. I'm 22, and yeah, I'm going to be your tour guide, so let's go. So welcome to Bootham Bar. So this is one of the key gates that will be guarding the ancient city of York. So in 1483, Richard III, during his summer royal progress, this is basically when a royal through the summer months will do a progress throughout the United Kingdom, doing like a royal march to show like his splendor and kind of validate him as a royal. In 1483, he knocked through the barrier because he wanted it to be opened up for like a royal big opulent royal transition into the city to enunciate his arrival. In 1501, a door knocker was put onto the gate, so Scottish people had to knock on the door and be allowed passage by guard. So they had to announce themselves first. These are the bar walls. This is a great source of military pride and strength for the city. Now, while these date back to Roman times, they're actually largely medieval. This is because in the 14th century, the walls were strengthened to fight Scottish skirmishes and rebellions that were growing in the city. Now, this leads me on to my next point. So, a myth that many tour guides, or even most York citizens, will tell you is that if you have a bow and arrow, get your hands on a bow and arrow, you can legally shoot a Scotsman from outside the walls if you're standing in. Just legally kill them. This is completely a myth, it's not true, and it has no historical backing. So don't be shooting any Scottish people. Welcome to Stonegate. We're nestled right between the Minster and in the heart of York. Let me tell you some facts. Welcome to Stonegate. So we're currently sat upon the Roman street named Via Praetorium. Now this street is intrinsic to telling York's story. So Stonegate, the name, has both Roman and Norse origins and is emblematic of the two empires that once ran the city. So gate, for example, comes from the Norse name Gata, which means street. So if you look at York City Centre, you'll see Mipplegate, Fossgate, Wormgate, and other names that basically have street at the end and hold their Norse origins. Now the stone comes into play with two different theories. So the first theory that the Romans paved this street with stone, and it was one of the first to be paved in the United Kingdom. And the second is that the Romans got limestone and sourced it from Mediterranean countries and regions, followed it up the sea, and went through the River Ouse, which then transported it up this street in large amounts and then built the York Minster, Stonegate. Okay, so this is one of my favorite parts of the street. So you have this guy up here, he's this little devil watching over everyone. So he's there as a branding for a lot of printing presses that used to run over Stonegate. So in the 1800s, you had these printing presses that had just come about, and people were very scared of these printing presses because they thought that it had attachments to mysticism or evil sorcery and whatnot. So these printing presses kind of leaned into this by putting this devil guy as branding. Nice. Okay, so sandwiched between the Hypatia sign and the shop, we have a depiction of the Roman goddess Minerva. This statue was carved by John Wolstenholme in 1801, and it was to depict or sell books for the local bookshop at the time. Since then, it's turned into something else, but it used to be an advertisement for shops, much like the devil statue. And as she's the goddess of wisdom, I guess they thought, if you read enough, you'll become like Minerva. Okay, welcome to Bally Hall. We're just sandwiched right between the Stone Gate over there and Hypatia Gate. So this was originally built in 1360 for the Nostell Priory of monks, basically accommodation and whatnot. And then in the 15th century, it was acquired by a very rich goldsmith and was over time, over the century, was divvied up and quite neglected. 18th and 19th century, it became just basically a series of derelict workshops. So in the 1980s, the York Civic Trust came and they basically restored it to its former medieval glory. And so you can see the Tudor style is very much here, but if you look at the straightness of the lines, you can tell that it's not original Tudor. What we'd like to call this is mock Tudor, because in the shambles, for instance, you can see that they're handmade, but here this was restored. Here, this would be, I assume, originally intended for the monks. It says here, and pardon my Latin, Nihil domestica sede Jonclaudius, and this basically roughly translates to nothing is more delightful than home. It's kind of like a nice greeting when you get to your doorstep. Okay, welcome to York Minster. We're currently stood outside one of the largest cathedrals in Northern Europe, just at the West Wing entrance. This cathedral took over 250 years to be built, with construction beginning in 1220 and only been finished in 1472. The cathedral's undergone many fires, several in fact, and one of the fires taking up the entire interior with only the crucifix remaining. Some say it's a miracle. I say, why would God strike lightning bolts down on his churches? I don't know. Whatever you make of it, it happened. It's history. The largest stained glass window in medieval Europe was also restored at York Minster. Emperor Constantine the Great, the Roman emperor, was even proclaimed right by the York Minster, and he was the first Catholic emperor in Rome. Is the added of Queen Elizabeth II. So this was added in 2022, just following her passing in September. The King Charles, now King Charles II, came to visit the Minster and cut the ribbon, as it were, open up the commemoration for his late mother. But he was egged by York locals quite viciously. But yeah, the Queen itself is quite controversial because it's kind of in a religious site. But it is owned by the Anglican Church, so they have the right to do it. It also kind of sticks out a little bit because it's all white and the rest is limestone, but I'm guessing that hopefully she'll age over time. She was locally cut and made at the local stone cutters just around the corner from the Minster. But just hope she ages well and fits in a bit better. There's nothing you can really do. I mean, she's there and she's here to stay. So, rest in peace. R.I.P. Yeah. Okay, so after walking to the treasurer's house, I just wanted to tell a really insane story. When archaeologists were excavating underneath the York Minster, they found a hidden 10-foot Roman column. They're not sure why it was hidden, but there is signs of Viking activity, so that may be a reason why it was buried. Now, that's kind of emblematic of the Roman presence in York, York. Constantine the Great and Septimus Severus both died right near the York Minster, in the heart of York. While I said earlier that Constantine the Great was a Christian, he only really did it on his deathbed because he basically converted right on his deathbed. He wanted to be a Christian and win favor with his God. But in reality, if a Roman emperor was to declare himself Christian, especially as he was the first, he would be in a lot of trouble, as they were most persecuting him at this time. Okay, so welcome to King Square, York. Now an open square, it's once home to St. Andrew's Church. You can see this by looking at the street sign here. It says King's Square, and the street sign here it says King's Court. So you can see that there used to be a structure once in the middle. It was also home to a plague burial ground. So if you follow up onto the stage, you can now see inscriptions in the pavement of old gravestones. It's now home to many street performers, and if you come in the daytime, you'll see magic tricks, you'll see singing, dancing, all types of stage performers. And they're literally dancing on people's graves. You'll also see that there's a lot of chocolate connections, coffee shops, sort of the modern mixing with the medieval. That's because of York's chocolate history, as its primary export after tourism is chocolate. Of all the many facets of York shambles, I think this has to be one of my favourite. So we're currently in the shrine of Margaret Clitheroe. Margaret Clitheroe converted to Catholicism in her early life when it was completely legal to be Catholic. This is because of the English Reformation spearheaded by Henry VIII in the 1500s. So she decided to hold sermons and service at the back of her husband's butcher shops. I'm not sure how her husband felt about it, but it was completely illegal to do so. She had mass, she had Bible readings for local children, and it was just a safe haven for the Catholics of York. She was jailed 7 times for this, and for the final time, they put her to death. So they actually put her to death in a very gruesome, horrible way. So they said, would you like to be Catholic, or would you like to die? She said, I would rather die Catholic than die Protestant. So they put her to death and punished her by putting a door over her body, and they slowly put more and more stones until she was slowly pressed down and basically crushed. It's really horrific. But the memory of Margaret Clay the Rose still lives on, as a nun went to the graveyard at night and severed her hand from her body. This is now a relic kept in my school, All Saints Roman Catholic School, in a bar complex.
Welcome to York Museum Gardens. This is a botanical garden and is home to nearly 40 species of trees and many well-tended plants. It also has an observatory right over there, built in 1832. Today we'll be exploring the medieval abbey as well as the connection to the York City walls. Thank you. Okay, so this next stop's quite easy to miss. So when you're standing by the Yorkshire Museum, you have to go down this street here and you keep walking until you arrive here, right next to the Henry Baines plaque. He was the creator and botanist of the museum gardens. So you walk up this way, and you go right through this passageway to hit the tower. Okay, so one of the hidden nooks and crannies of the York Museum Gardens is the multi-angular tower that we're sat right in the base of here. So this tower as you can see, it's built into the city walls, and would be a main point of defence for Eboracum, which is the Latin name for York, the Roman name. You can see the Roman brickwork at the bottom here, complemented with this red stone. That's how you can normally tell it's Roman, as it's lighter and more consistent. As you get to the top, you can see medieval 13th century stone, as it's darker and less consistent stonework. So you can basically see a timeline of York's eras straight through this stonework. Okay, so this is St Mary's Abbey, formerly known as St Olave's Church. The roots of this building trace back to 1055. In 1068, there was a land exchange between the Archbishop of York and Stephen of Whitby. Between this exchange, they basically established a Benedictine monastery of this abbey, and that's when it became the Abbey of St Mary. In 1068, William the Conqueror then established the land for the construction of the abbey. It was meant to rival the grandeur and opulence of the York Minster. This was fairly short-lived, as by the 1500s, during the break from Rome and the English Reformation, Henry VIII decided to take apart all of this cathedral and basically sack it for all of its opulence and riches. He took apart the stone and he used it for other construction projects, I'm guessing probably across London and maybe personal vanity projects. Henry VIII was quite well known for this.